Command the Five Fates is set to have its launch date revealed September 28th at the Tokyo Game Show, where Digital Extremes will use their panel to host a dev stream featuring reveals for the update. One thing that has already been confirmed is the finalization of the Companion 2.0 rework. The main component of this update is to companion abilities, nerfing the top somewhat, but mostly focused on bringing the bottom of the barrel abilities up. So let's kick open the doors to the dojo and talk about Kubrows, the weakest companions in the game. I am Totama, and welcome to Terran House. Kubrows were introduced back in 2014, and they've always struggled against their robotic peers, such as Carrier, Jade, and Deathcube. Part of this is because of their robot-exclusive mods, such as Guardian and Primed Regen, just giving them some better upfront utility. Kubrows do have their own abilities based on their breed, and there's a handful of them to choose from, and there are a total of 6 breeds of Kubrow. Let's get in and talk about them from the weakest one to the strongest one, starting with by far the weakest Kubrow in the game, the Sunika. The Sunika is by far the worst companion in the entire game, and this is due to its very lackluster abilities of Savagery and Unleashed. Both these abilities really don't offer anything to assist this Kubrow, and one of them is straight up useless. Let's start by talking about Savagery. Savagery is a mod that causes the Kubrow to target an enemy and try to kill them. It increases finisher damage, but as we can see here, if it doesn't manage to actually kill the target will simply throw them off before going on a brief cooldown. While this sounds good on paper, aside from the fact that it does mediocre damage, some enemies, such as flying enemies and enemies with different non-humanoid body types, can't even be targeted by this ability. It's very lackluster and doesn't do much to help you. The second ability of the Sunika Kubrow is Unleashed, and this ability just falls flat because it only has a select few targets it can use in the entire game, those being the capture targets, the main enemy to target in the capture game mode. As we can see here, my Sunika pins him down, and now I can shoot him and kill him. The issue is you can do this much faster than this Kubrow can. Simply going into a mission with the proper setup, such as Titania, going in, blitzing down the target, and leaving is much faster than waiting on your companion to pin a target for a few seconds. And since those are the only enemies that can even be targeted by Unleashed, it leaves it very lackluster and very narrow in its usage. I'm actually going a little off script here, just trying to talk about how bad that this ability really is. There's no reason to run this. It's much easier to take those targets out yourself. Let's talk about the next Kubrow on this list, or should I say the next infested pet, as we're talking about the Helminth Charger, a companion that you get by draining a Helminth cyst from your warframe into a Kubrow egg. It has the abilities Proboscis and Trample, and as the second of the offensive breeds of Kubrows, it really struggles as companions just don't do much damage and have a hard time when all they offer is damage. I do want to make a quick side note here about Strain Fever and Strain Eruption, 2 mods that come from mission farms as opposed to coming with the Helminth Charger. I'm not really touching on them because I'm not sure if they're going to be included when DE said the abilities, as these come from a side mission and not with the Helminth Charger. But I did want to mention them here so that you knew that they existed and know that I know that they exist. The first ability of the Helminth Charger is Trample. This ability causes the Helminth to rush at enemies, knocking them over and dealing a marginal amount of damage. The real problem with this ability is just it doesn't have enough damage to be worth using or looking at over other abilities or other things you could be doing, and since it knocks enemies around, it can make them harder to hit with your AoE or harder to hit with your guns in general since they're just randomly moving around the map. The second ability of the Helminth Charger is Proboscis, where it lashes its tongue out and pulls an enemy to it, doing a marginal amount of damage. Similar to Trample, this hurts you more than it helps you, as it knocks an enemy down so that way you're not headshotting them, while also pulling them out of your AoE damage. Because of this, it really means that the Helminth Charger tends to hurt you more than it helps you. Now let's get on to our next candidate, and the first of the defensive Kubrows with enough utility to be worth talking about, the Raksa. The Raksa is the defensive-orientated Kubrow, specializing in Protect to restore your shields, and Howl to scare and CC enemies. This gives the Raksa more of a tank or disruption role, as opposed to the damage-focused roles of the Helminth and Sunika Kubrow. But where this Kubrow struggles isn't necessarily its abilities, it's more the consistency of its abilities. Let's take a look at one of the robotic-specific abilities, Guardian. Guardian is a mod that all robotics can use, from the Hounds of Parvos to the Sentinels and even Moas. Thanks to its clear-cut trigger, when shields run out, it will always proc when you need it the most, before going on a 30-second cooldown. And thanks to it being 100% of the shields, it doesn't matter which frame you're playing, you will always get the same value out of it. Now let's compare that to Protect. Looking at Protect, it restores a flat 300 shields, which can be really good, or can be nothing at all depending on the frame that you're playing. On top of that, with no clear trigger, the Kubrow might not even proc this when you need it, or proc it when you're full shields and don't need a restore at the time. Being at the will of the Kubrow is what damns this ability. A quick touch on Howl, there's not really too much to say here. This is a very good ability. While sure, it's at the mercy of whether or not the Kubrow wants to use it, so are all the other ones, and this one does what it does very well. It can fear all enemies aside from Eximus that have their overguard up, and CCing Eximus is already something nothing else can do anyway, so it's not special in that way. It's a good ability, and it works well. Next up, let's talk about a companion that isn't bad on its own, but just gets outclassed simply by being a Kubrow versus a robot, the Huras. With the Huras Kubrow, there really isn't much to say about Hunt. Hunt is just trample from the Helminth again. The real problem is in its second ability, Stalk, where there is a companion on the robotic side that simply eats its lunch here, Shade and its brethren. Shade, along with its Barrow version Prisma and the Prime version, all can use the ability Ghost, which is basically just Stalk but better. When we actually take a look at the Ghost mod, we can see it is quite literally a one-for-one copy of Stalk. Only Shade has access to the Cephalon Cimerus Ambush mod to give you more damage, and being a Sentinel, it can also use the Guardian mod to reinforce your shields whenever they break. This means that Shade eats the Huras's lunch and doesn't leave it anything else. You're simply getting the same companion while also getting the best parts of the Raksa Kubrow mixed into one Sentinel. And since Shade won't ever run away from you, Shade will never accidentally leave its own stealth, just leaving you with a much better stealth-based companion. Before we get on to our next companion, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It really does help out, and I am trying to grow this channel. Come on, join Terran House, you know you wanna. Next up, we have the Chesa Kubrow, my personal favorite Kubrow of all of the breeds. With Neutralize and Retrieve, this companion actually has something very unique about it. In Retrieve, as it was dubbed in Dev, Chesacrate allows the Chesa to use Necros' Desecrate to give you additional loot drops every so often from slain enemies. Chesacrate, as it was dubbed by DE before coming to launch, with a rework of what Retrieve did, is kind of what makes the Chesa Kubrow so good. Its other ability is unfortunately very lackluster because it once again, similar to the Huras, has its lunch eaten by another companion in the game. This time, the Sister of Parvos Hounds. We're not going to get into too much detail about the Sister of Parvos Hounds, only that they exist and that they can all use one particular mod that makes it so that way the Chesa can feel lackluster, Repo Audit. When we look at Repo Audit, we can see exactly what's going on here. A 30-meter AoE magnetic pulse versus a single target disarm. It's no contest. Power Creep has clearly just put the Chesa Kubrow in the dirt. The final Kubrow on our list, and the best Kubrow in the entire game, is the Sahasa with the abilities Dig and Ferocity. Ferocity being just a renamed savagery from the Sunika Kubrow, what really sets this companion above and beyond is Dig. What makes the Sahasa Kubrow so good is Dig, being able to restore your health, ammo, and even energy as long as you're not in combat. Not to mention that it can randomly dig up a large assortment of mods from the Orokin Void drop table. This includes mods such as Shotgun Barrage, the Smite mods, the Bane mods, Cleanse mods, Flow, Hell's Chamber, Intensify, and those are just some of the gold mods you can get. That's not even including the fact that this can get you anywhere between 15 and 80 endo. Seriously, this ability is insane with its usefulness both for early game and late game players. Not really much more to say about the Sahasa Kubrow. What makes it so good is not necessarily its combat stats or its durability, it's just how useful Dig can be. Getting you health, ammo, and energy is just too good to pass up late game. And early game, getting all of those variety of mods like Flow, Intensify, and Continuity is very, very important. Some of those mods are worth like 10 to 15 plat on market sometimes. They're just too good to get in the early game, and Endo is basically always good until you've reached the point of the game where you have all of your mods maxed. So where does that leave us with our fluffy little friends? Well, it doesn't leave us much room. They just simply lack general use mods like Guardian. Some of them are simply outclassed by other companions, such as the Huras getting completely outshined by Shade. It's kind of hard for the Kubrows right now. Hopefully that the rework coming up really does look at their abilities and make them actually useful. After the Kome and the 5 Fates update, I plan on doing an actually more in-depth version of the Kubrows. There's just not really a reason to do one right now, because they're getting reworked in maybe a month or so? It's hard to say because we don't have an actual release date for Kome and the 5 Fates. But that was a Terran House breakdown of the Kubrows. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Yes, I did just do another call to action at the end of the video. But anyway, later guys.